It's a film about sweaty flyboys trying to be the best at being a perspiring flyboy, with one nearly dehydrated flyboy falling for a civilian contractor while being a flyboy who flies by in humid jets.
That was some of the best flying I've seen yet. Right up to the part where you got killed.
It's either an advert for someone who fixes thermostats, or it's the 1986 movie Top Gun. Director Tony Scott has a reputation for visually arresting films, where people were very confident and earnest, but at the same time, there is a silliness in their masquerading as serious drama, like the time I delivered a soaring and empowering valedictorian speech at my graduation from Clown College. Top Gun is a crowd-pleasing, enjoyable film, loved by millions. Why? Well, let's have a look. Naval aviator, don't call him a pilot, Maverick and his Rio Goose were the number 2 team stationed on the USS Enterprise when number 1, Cougar, loses his cool and hands in his wings and his belt and his house keys and a floppy disk with a dodgy copy of Space Harrier for the Commodore Amiga.
Son, your ego is writing checks your body can't cash.
Despite listing all of Maverick's many flaws,
You've been busted. You lost your qualifications as section leader 3 times. Put in hack twice.
Follically correct Captain Kirk informs Maverick and Goose that they're now number 1, and they also have a shot to be number 1 at Top Gun, the number 1 elite training school for number 1 douchebags. At Top Gun there's Iceman, Slider, Sundown, Viper, Hollywood, etc. Of course, at some point you're likely to run out of macho-sounding call signs. Since they seem to have a new intake every few months, you can just imagine the call signs by the end of the year, when the fall and winter classes would consist of fingernail, AA battery, doormat, TV remote, and mucus, all vying for Top Gun. Maverick breaks the rules of engagement, breaks the rules of the base by buzzing the control tower, because Maverick is a Maverick, and thank goodness he picked his call sign after taking a personality test in a Cosmo he read while waiting at the dentist, otherwise things could have been weird. Iceman doesn't like Maverick because he's a loose cannon. Instructor Jester sees Maverick's talent but thinks he's a loose cannon. Commanding Officer Viper flew with Maverick's dad in Nam and thinks he's a loose cannon, but one who's a great aviator. Goose, being Maverick's radar intercept officer, is someone that no one has an opinion on. After all, a loose cannon radar interceptor officer is about as dangerous as a lollipop on D-Day. However, every time Maverick gets his ass chewed out by superior officers, Goose by association also finds he's been ripped a new asshole. At last count, he has 22 of them. Goose is a family man, married to, wait, she doesn't have a call sign. We'll just call her Sparkles.
You never close your eyes anymore when I kiss your lips.
Maverick tries to pick up a woman in a bar, first through a poorly thought out public spectacle, and then while trying to catch her on the toilet, only to find that Charlotte is a civilian contractor at the base, call sign Charlie. There's a bit of back and forth and byplay and flirting, but the two eventually, technical term in the Navy, mid-air refuel, and then of course fall for each other. Meanwhile, at the Top Gun school, in an atmosphere of hyper-competitive and broken thermostat-fueled rivalries, the lads engage in fake dogfights, then watch replays of their action. This is all in service of telling Maverick how good he is, but that he's a loose cannon.
Who's the best pilot? No, I think I can figure that one out on my own.
Maverick and Iceman's rivalry to win the top of the Top Gun, to be the toppest gunnist, is so extreme that they will have to resort to passive-aggressive abuse, name-calling, but they do have some rules of engagement, namely not the hair or face. Top Gun is part sports movie, part war movie, part high school drama but it's just jocks without any nerds, and part romantic drama. Basically the perfect date movie if you're trying to get men and women to go see a film and not have one or the other be bored rigid the entire time. This is a hot movie. Almost every single frame of the movie is full of people sweating. They're sweating in cockpits thousands of feet in the air, sweating on aircraft carriers, sweating in court, sweating in briefings, elevators, debriefings.
It looks like you need another shower.
But it's mainly just the men. Charlie and Sparkles don't sweat, but they do cry. They're all losing fluids from excessive perspiration and crying, so much so that they may be in serious danger of dehydration unless they increase their fluid intake with added electrolytes. It's almost a warning, and as such, this should be the last title card of the film. Also, a sweaty Maverick gets on his motorbike without wiping himself down. That's just asking for a cold. Also, I didn't want to shame them, but sweat does tend to whiff a bit, so some Old Spice wouldn't go amiss, lads. A training accident sees Goose killed and Maverick loses his confidence. Yes, this is a film about Maverick, but every single character only exists to perform a certain role in Maverick's story. In some of the few scenes when Maverick is not on screen, they're talking about him, or concerned about him. Even the freshly minted widow Sparkles, or Mrs. Goose, or Mother Goose, or Carol, seems more concerned about comforting Maverick than mourning her late husband. In the film's final act, an actual real-world incident sees the pilots in real action. A real-world incident that is in no way outlined, involving a foreign enemy that is in no way identified. For sake of argument, let's just say New Zealand. Maverick is sent into battle but has lost his spark, doubting himself for several crucial seconds while his colleagues are getting shot up. Maverick hopes for some form of divine inspiration, waiting for Goose to tell him what to do, which is weird since he never seemed to listen to Goose when he was alive. Also, Goose was not a Jedi. Maverick snaps out of his funk and takes down a few MiGs. Back on the carrier, everyone is happy and even Iceman seems to have thawed a bit.
You can be my wingman anytime. Bullshit. You can be mine.
Then we wrap up their romantic bit with Charlie and Maverick. Top Gun started life as a magazine article on the Top Gun school when super producing duo Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson saw potential in the idea and pursued the rights. Other classic films based on magazine articles include Saturday Night Fever, Argo, and apparently Star Wars Episode 9 The Rise of Skywalker. The Navy went all in, giving support and offered access to personnel and equipment, most notably F-14s. Director Tony Scott's career had become a bit stuck by the mid-80s. His arty vampire film The Hunger had admirers, but as it wasn't a huge hit, he wasn't on any producer's list of directors to hire for a big film. Simpson and Bruckheimer thought Scott would bring a unique vision to the project. Initially he was thinking of it as a dark art film until he gradually realised everyone else wanted a fun popcorn flick. Right now I'm having visions of somebody reading the script to Top Gun and thinking how to make it dark and arty. At one point, Paramount lost interest in making the film, but a management change saw incoming studio bosses finally greenlight the film. A $15 million budget was pretty small change when even Paramount's relatively cheap Star Trek movies were costing more. The Navy had concerns with parts of the script. Charlie was originally in the Navy but changed to a civilian. The accident that left Maverick gooseless had to be restructured so that it didn't offend the Navy, but it also had to be an accident that wouldn't reflect poorly on Maverick and ground him. The producers had their own request. Scenes set in the sweaty locker room, with access to the real naval airbase at Miramar, California, and actual F-14 planes. The film has an edge of reality to it. Of course, the whole point of the school was to get the pilots to work as a team, so there was no actual leaderboard contest as depicted in the movie. But then again, it's a movie. The cast did a bit of training for their roles and bonded through partying. Of course, both Kilmer and Cruise stayed somewhat in character, never socialising with each other. It is unknown if, after the film, they were ever each other's wingman. Tom Cruise as Maverick is about as cocky a lead character that ever existed. His confidence in the early part of the film comes undone, and the final act is all about him trying to regain his mojo. Kelly McGillis as Charlie is a slightly more mature woman, falling for an aviator against her better judgment.
And I just don't want anyone to know that I've fallen for you.
Anthony Edwards as Goose gives a thankless role some dignity. If he wasn't so likeable, we wouldn't care so much when he dies.
She's lost that love and feeling.
She's like... No, she hasn't.
Yes, she has.
She has not lost that look.
Goose, she's lost it. Matt, come on.
I hate it when she does that.
After starring in a few comedies, Val Kilmer plays a serious role in the closest thing the film has to an antagonist.
You're everyone's problem. That's because every time you go up in the air, you're unsafe.
There are more than a few familiar faces, with Michael Ironside and Tom Skerritt among others, including a small early role for Meg Ryan.
You two characters are going to Top Gun.
But the rising star of Tom Cruise, anecdotally a very driven man from a young age, sees him add another iconic role to his filmography.
I feel the need for speed.
As we said, Top Gun's sports movie, war movie, and a bit of a hot and heavy romantic movie. But even if you cut Kelly McGillis from the film entirely, it would still play like a rom-com.
How you doing?
Tony Scott's direction is tight. The camera work and framing turn Top Gun from a silly bit of fun into a really well-made silly bit of fun. Compare it to Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor, a film which owes a lot to Top Gun, and you can just see how much a well-developed artistic vision can make or break even a popcorn flick. Or maybe Michael Bay just isn't as good as Tony Scott.
That's right.
The Navy's participation meant real aircraft could be used in some shots, though there are also some well-shot miniatures photographed against real sky. Top Gun is always a nice film to look at, but it's also a film that has a soundtrack that has become so familiar you probably don't even realise it's from this movie. The ballad Take My Breath Away by Berlin won an Oscar for Best Original Song. There's also Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone and Harold Faltermeyer's instrumental Top Gun anthem. The soundtrack here is attached to the collective consciousness like those bedbugs you picked up from that cheap hotel. I mean, there were 2 hotels with vacancies, but you chose the one where the manager was burning mattresses in the parking lot because it was $5 a night cheaper. Live and learn. Top Gun was a huge success when it was released in 1986, though reviews were all over the shop, like a store detective during school holidays.
I heard that about you. You like to work alone.
This film is really well loved, so much so that any jokes made at its expense are sure to attract completely rational and totally proportionate comments. I had managed to bypass the film's hype for a very long time, and when I finally did see it, I won't say when, but it was on HD DVD. I had seen Hot Shots many times, a near-perfect parody of Top Gun. So for me, finally watching Top Gun was a bit like when you've been listening to Weird Al Yankovic's version of Eat It for years, and then you suddenly hear Michael Jackson sing Beat It for the first time, and it just blows your mind. The Library of Congress selected Top Gun for preservation, possibly because they had already gone through the list of actual great films to preserve and had moved on to the list of great films to watch on a first date. Once they'd gone through that list, they'd start on the next list, great films to watch while high.
No.
No?
No.
After years of being beloved, well parodied, and a massively influential part of pop culture, Top Gun would finally receive a sequel in 2022, Top Gun Maverick, which saw Tom Cruise return as well as a few other familiar faces, just so we could all ignore our own reflections in the mirror and go, geez, they sure got old. Top Gun is a defining film of its star and its director, a film so 80s it should be collecting a pension. It's lovable even when it's a mite silly or overwrought, but has become a true classic. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below or check out some of our other videos. Oh, and Maverick's real name is Pete Mitchell.